Unknowingly being dosed with LSD for 77 straight days sounds more like a Grateful Dead tour than it does a top secret government project. But this was one of the many human experiment programs that was conducted as part of an operation so secret that prominent figures in the US government didn't even know it was happening under their own roof. MK Ultra. Tonight, we're going to be diving into the cauldron and discussing the wild, true stories of MK Ultra. Prostitutes, a lot of drugs, and a little bit of murder. Let's get into it. My name is Kayla, and welcome to Cauldron Convos, baby. It's November. It's November. Happy November. Happy November. It's Thanksgiving. It's Thanksgiving. Before we get any further, I just wanted to ask you guys to please consider subscribing to this channel because we post videos every single freaking week on the spine-chilling conspiracy and paranormal podcast topics that you want to hear. Yeah, you do. And if you comment, I will be replying to every single comment. And if you also email cauldronconvos@gmail.com and send a foot picture, then we will just, love it. We will just look at it and just be amused by your toes. I don't know.
Yeah, feel free to comment down what topic you'd like us to speak about next.
Oh yeah, that too, but more importantly, the photos. Thank you. Now, according to USA.gov, which, by the way, do people even visit that website? I guess I did. The Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA, collects, evaluates, and disseminates vital information on economic, military, political, scientific, and other developments abroad to safeguard national security. And unlike the FBI, the CIA has no law enforcement function, and it's focused mainly on overseas or foreign countries.
Not to bring Halloween back up, but the CIA is often referred to as the international boogeyman, as they
Really?
kind of are the world police. Yeah, they're in everyone's business.
Is that what the boogeyman does?
The boogeyman's under your bed. CIA's under your bed.
Ooh,
Boogeyman's
true.
in your closet. CIA's in your closet.
Now, although the CIA's purpose is ultimately safety, the CIA has had a few controversies in their time, such as domestic wiretapping, recruitment of Nazis, and drug trafficking, of course. But one of the most concerning is this illegal human experimentation program, MK Ultra, that we are going to be getting into the nitty-gritty, disgusting details today. That's right, Halloween's over, but not the CIA. It's still being spooky. Now let's start at the beginning, because you might be wondering, why would the CIA, a government agency, do something like this? Why would they do something illegal? Why would they experiment on humans? What's the cause of this? Well, as the Korean War was coming to an end, the New York Times published an article noting that American prisoners of war returning may have been converted by communist brainwashers, and soldiers were reportedly brainwashed so much that they refused to come back to the dear old United States. I know, it was so shocking for these government officials to hear. Through the rest of the 50s, Americans were scared and intrigued by the idea of brain warfare. More newspaper articles were released on mind control techniques and stories, and this concept of brainwashing even started leaking into, modern books and stories. And during this same time in 1953, it's almost like destiny, Alan Dulles was appointed director of the CIA. And during a speech he gave at Princeton, he stated, "In the past few years, we have become accustomed to hearing much about the battle for men's minds, the war of ideologies. I wonder, however, whether we clearly perceive the magnitude of the problem, whether we realize how sinister the battle for men's minds has become in Soviet hands," he continued. "We might call it, in its new form, brain warfare." He even described Soviets' brain warfare as abhorrent and nefarious, which, if you don't know what abhorrent is, it means inspiring disgust and loathing. Hatred. But apparently it's only disgusting if the Soviet does it, because only 3 days later, this director decided to do it as well and start MK Ultra.
Wow.
Now, the purpose of MK Ultra in the official testimony of CIA Director Stansfield Turner in 1977 was the use of biological and chemical materials in altering human behavior. But what really was MK Ultra? This was just the testimony. What crazy things and what crazy drugs did it actually entail?
Oftentimes, CIA operates under the radar, so they have to perform some, under the radar activities like MK Ultra to try to get a leg up on foreign nationals in other countries.
Yeah, and MK Ultra was essentially an illegal experimentation program designed and undertaken by the CIA. But the name MK Ultra comes from a combination of the digraph MK, indicating the sponsorship of the technical services staff, and the word Ultra, which formerly designated the most secret classification of World War II intelligence.
I thought it was when I first read about this, like years and years and years and years ago.
Yeah, sure, yesterday.
No,
Continue.
I am familiar with this. I thought it was MLK Ultra, like Martin Luther King Ultra.
I know, I keep hearing Ultra, and I'm like, Ultra, Megatron, unload! And a transporter comes out of nowhere. What was that movie? Oh, it's Captain America. Where all of them are like, well, that's Transformers. Yeah,
it's
okay.
Transformers.
Continue. Well, but I'm saying the ones where, yeah, no, in war, it was Captain America. Everyone was making a big, whatever, robot spaceship guy. Okay, suit. Yes, they were in the sand, they were in the desert, and he was wearing his suit, and they were trying to make him. They
No,
kidnapped
that
him?
was Iron Man.
That's what I meant. Iron Man. Okay. Now, journalist Stephen Kinzer, who has spent many years investigating this program, calls the operation the most sustained search in history for techniques of mind control. But after Dulles had a speech at Princeton, 3 days later, when he approved of it, he appointed Sidney Gottlieb, an American chemist and spy, to head the charge on this program. Now, the main goal of MK Ultra was to develop mind-controlling drugs to use against the Soviets. However, the experiments were conducted without the consent of individuals, which is a big no-no in psychology. I think I actually learned about this originally in a psychology class on what not to do, aka the morals and ethics of psychology studies, and the troubles in the past that we've incurred.
It's like how they infected a bunch of people with syphilis in the 50s.
Yeah, and didn't tell
really,
them that they had it.
It's so bad.
And it was all the minorities they just didn't care about, or impoverished people.
Now, can we picture what the U.S. is doing now to us, the government?
We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be discussing what conspiracies, what is happening
The frogs
nowadays.
are gay. The frogs are gay.
Okay, someone's getting really mad about that in the comments, actually, about your accent of Alex Jones.
Alex Jones is here. He's saying the frogs are gay. I don't know.
Oh, that wasn't you. That was just... Yeah, actually, I hired Alex Jones. He's really desperate for money right now, so I actually hired him, paying him... Actually, I shouldn't say on the record that I'm paying Alex Jones. I know people are really believing me, but I'm not. Or am I?
You should believe him because the frogs are gay.
Or am I? Conspiracy. Alex Jones is being paid by small YouTubers, by micro-influencers to pay off his $1 billion debt.
It's 1 trillion.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Inflation. Okay, let's go. Now, MK Ultra included activities such as electroshock therapy, hypnosis, polygraphs, radiation, and a variety of other drugs and chemicals. But let's really get into the nitty-gritty. What happened and what evidence is there really to go off of? Now, most records were actually ordered to be destroyed in 1973 by CIA Director Richard Helms, which, by the way, he should be in jail if he's not. You should never destroy evidence, right?
Well, that's an actually pretty popular technique used by the U.S. government.
But was he ordered by someone above him?
No, I think it was guilty by association, so he didn't want to, be brought to justice.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later, but I think that he should be jailed just for even burning the evidence.
Well, he's dead, but...
Oh, well, his ghost should be, he was number one. We should go into his grave, take his number one hat.
Is that a reference?
SpongeBob, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how that... Smitty...
That's the reference going over my head.
There was actually no reference. I don't know why. I just immediately thought of going to digging up Richard Helms's grave and taking his hat off and being like, it's my hat. Okay. But,
Wow.
you have one soundbite and you need more. Thank you. So because the records were destroyed, we do not have a full picture of the 150 funded research sub-projects sponsored by MK Ultra and other related CIA programs. However, one 1955 MK Ultra document gives us an indication of the size and range of the effort. It refers to the study of an assortment of mind-altering substances described as follows. Now, there are actually 17 long sentences, so I'm just going to read out a few of them that I found particularly interesting. Substances which will promote illogical thinking and impulsiveness to the point where the recipient would be discredited in public.
Sounds like Adderall.
Hey, don't discredit the ADHD community. They're growing strong on TikTok. Materials which will promote the intoxicating effect of alcohol. Materials which will produce the signs and symptoms of recognized diseases in a reversible way, so they may be used for malingering, etc. Substances which will enhance the ability of individuals to withstand privation, torture, and coercion during interrogation and so-called brainwashing. Materials and physical methods which will produce amnesia for events preceding and during their use. Substances which will produce physical disablement such as paralysis of the legs, acute anemia, etc. A material which will cause mental confusion of such a type the individual under its influence will find it difficult to maintain a fabrication under questioning. Substances which promote weakness or distortion of the eyesight or hearing faculties, preferably without permanent effects. I love that. That's my favorite line. Preferably without permanent effects. Now, I didn't list over half of them, I think, but as you can see, they're a little wild. And MK Ultra wasn't just one project, as the U.S. Supreme Court wrote in a 1985 decision on a related case. It was actually 162 different projects that were indirectly financed by the CIA, but were contracted out to various universities, research foundations, and similar institutions. In all, at least 80 institutions and 185 researchers participated, but many didn't know that they were actually dealing with the CIA. They just were running these studies and just hey, we're at college, we're Stanford, let's go.
Well, that's how the CIA operates. They'll approach an institution. For example, Harvard took place in this, and they used Harvard students. A shell company, approaches them and says, hey, feed your kids some LSD, show them some videos, let's see what happens. Lo and behold, it screws people up.
So you said something interesting. You said, feeding the students the LSD. So who were actually the test subjects of MK Ultra? Now this is going to get wild, so you better sit in your seat here, because the folks who participated in MK Ultra, some of them didn't really even know what they were signing up for. They didn't know that they were involved in a defense research program, obviously, because it's the CIA and they want to keep it secretive. But because the CIA used mentally impaired boys from state schools, prisoners, American soldiers, and sexual psychopaths from a state hospital, they just thought that they could do this because they were easy targets, essentially. Prisoners were specifically willing to participate because they would get extra recreation time or commuted sentences for their participation in this study. And according to Sidney Gottlieb, the guy running the program, he actually noted that these people were people who could not fight back. Quote, the guy who started running this program. He knew what he was doing. He was preying on the weak.
Yeah, it's a very common theme in a lot of these paranormal conspiracies. They always prey on the weak, like the Salem witch trials. They convicted all the poor people first. It's get them.
Like Hocus Pocus 2. Just because those girls had no father figure in their lives, you think you could prey on them? Huh? Priest?
Who you think
Whatever
you are?
His name is? Reverend? And we can actually look at a point of view from a prisoner himself that participated in MK Ultra. Whitney Bulger, who was a former organized crime boss, wrote of his experience as an inmate test subject in MK Ultra. 8 convicts in a panic and paranoid state, Bulger said of the 1957 tests at the Atlanta Penitentiary, where he was serving time. Total loss of appetite, hallucinating. The room would change shape. Hours of paranoia and feeling violent. We experienced horrible periods of living nightmares and even blood coming out of the walls. Guys turning to skeletons in front of me. I saw a camera change into the head of a dog. I felt like I was going insane.
Sounds like a dead show.
I love how a crime boss who's definitely murdered people for drugs, sold his soul, sold his daughter,
sold guns, sold people. I think that's probably why it's such a bad trip, They say that you're supposed to do ayahuasca if you're a bad guy, and that'll make you a good guy. But you're not supposed to just be dosed on LSD.
Yeah, that's true. It is a bunch of people in prison that have definitely seen some stuff.
It's or
have gone through some stuff, because typically when you're in prison, you've had a bad upbringing.
Yeah, well, statistically.
And it's funny because the subjects that were actually fully consensual, they appear to be singled out for even more extreme experiments. In one case, 7 volunteers in Kentucky actually took LSD for 77 consecutive days. That is more days than a Grateful Dead tour in all. And that's consecutively. Imagine going to 77 days of a Dead show, taking LSD back to back to back.
Unconsensually. But the funny thing is that actually toured for like 30 years straight. But
yeah,
more or less nonstop.
I guess there are a lot of, groupies that might have done that. But
I mean, those are the people that are spinning in the back of the crowd.
What if those people are all the people that were part of this?
MK Ultra. In addition to Americans, the CIA also experimented on Canadians for MK Ultra. They started recruiting Canadians after they recruited British psychiatrist Donald Ewan. Cameron had been researching to correct schizophrenia by erasing existing memories and reprogramming the psyche, which was probably why the CIA hired him in addition to psychic driving, which he was the creator of. If you want to hear more just about how much of a loon this guy was, psychic driving is where subjects were listening to a loop of an audio message to alter their behavior. The subjects were also administered muscular paralytic drugs, such as Cure, to subdue them for purposes of exposure to the looped message. Talk about DUI.
Because it's psychic driving. Now, are we surprised that this is someone the CIA wanted to hire for MK Ultra? Someone that literally has wanted to make people like in a paralytic state to make them freaking weirdos.
This is like some Nazi shit.
It really is. And he would even drive from Albany to Montreal every week to carry out the MK Ultra Montreal experiments. And in present day times, he was being paid about $500,000.
Wow.
So much money. LSD was just one thing that Dr. Ewan used. He also used paralytic drugs, of course, and electroconvulsive therapy at 30 to 40 times the normal power usually used, which should be illegal.
Yeah, it sounds like a good time, though.
I don't know if I would be having a good time if someone was convulsing my mind.
Sounds like the vibes were absolutely electric.
It's imagine. They're all just breaking it down while people are being... Okay. And it's funny because during this era, Cameron actually became known worldwide as a psychiatrist, as the first chairman of the World Psychiatric Association, as well as the president of both the American Psychiatric Association and the Canadian Psychiatric Association. These are all very big deals in the psychology community. I would know because I minored in it, aka I took like 4 classes in it, and now I'm all of a sudden expert on the subject. But no, it really is. So it's kind of crazy that this guy was doing these things, but people were like, "You're so notable, you're so great." Like, hello. He's literally giving people paralytic drugs and like brainwashing them. But Canada wasn't the only foreign country where experiments from MK Ultra was held in. It was also in Denmark, surprisingly, like the least expected country for this to be held in. But unlike the United States and Canada, Denmark had a centralized population register, so this is why they did it there, which allowed participants to be tracked over the course of several years. And US psychologist Zarnoff Mednick worked with the Danish professor Fini I love that name, Fini Schlosinger, to study schizophrenia progression in Danish orphans. The project was later absorbed into MK Ultra, and in 1977, Schlosinger completed his doctoral dissertation on the project. But as MK Ultra had been very secretive and declared in the US to have been discontinued with records all destroyed, I can't say his name. Schlossinger's thesis became a state secret, and the children were actually required to undergo frequent and very harsh mental health assessments for which there was no informed consent. And in December 2021, radio documentarian Per Wennick discovered 36 boxes of MK Ultra records stored at a psychiatric center in a Copenhagen suburb. But when he asked for access, the center actually shredded the records. In violation of Danish law, actually, which, what the heck? Like, I hope someone, charged someone with something. I hope someone, scanned those documents, because you could just shred them all if it's against the law. How do people get away with this?
You just shred them. That's how the government...
CIA
CIA operates by their own rules.
Hate it.
But that's why America's the greatest country. All right.
Okay, George Bush.
Talk about someone who said he's doing something good and he wasn't.
Yeah. In addition to Denmark, MKUltra was happening in areas under American control in Europe and East Asia, mostly in Japan, Germany, and the Philippines. The CIA created secret detention centers so that the US could avoid criminal prosecution. Now, the CIA would capture people that they suspected were enemies and other people they deemed expendable to undertake various types of torture and human experimentation on them. The prisoners were interrogated while being administered psychoactive drugs, electroshocked, and subjected to extremes of temperature, sensory isolation, and the like to develop a better understanding of how to destroy and to control human minds. I would tap out in 1 second because I cannot stand being in the cold. But this is where it gets worse because sub-projects were getting weirder and weirder, specifically something called Operation Midnight Climax, which, yeah, the name sounds dirty, and that's because it was. Operation Midnight Climax was established by Sidney Gottlieb, and this project, Gottlieb actually got permission to test drugs on unknowing citizens. Now, prostitutes were being paid by the CIA. They were literally on the CIA payroll. Imagine being a prostitute and being like, I'm on the CIA payroll. You made it. Put that on your LinkedIn. Put that on your resume under skills.
I wonder if they were actually agents.
They were prostitutes.
Well, I mean, that's a lot of trust, though.
They're very trustworthy prostitutes.
Or it's an agent being a prostitute.
Or they fed them LSD too. Or they brainwashed them before.
Well, it was actually quite crafty what they would do. Is sometimes their dosage methods were quite sophisticated where the prostitute would leave the room and they would excrete an aerosol to dose the individual with drugs.
Whoa. So now that we talked about what test subjects were a part of MKUltra, let's get into the notable test subjects of MKUltra. I know that sounds pretty messed up, being like, well, those weren't notable, and these are the most notable of MKUltra, but, you know, we gotta do it.
Some notable people who reportedly volunteered for the CIA-backed experiments with LSD included Robert Hunter, Grateful Dead lyricist, no surprise there, Ted Kaczynski, better known as the Unabomber, James Joseph Whitey Bulger, who we quoted earlier, but is a notorious Boston mobster.
Dang. Can you believe it? I mean, I can.
And
Definitely the Grateful Dead lyricist one, but...
And saving best for last, Charles Manson has also been tied to MKUltra by author Tom O'Neill, beginning with his time in prison when Manson took part in a drug-induced psychological experiments run by the federal government. This continued through his ongoing connection with the CIA's Free Medical Clinic in San Francisco, once out of prison in 1967. And then the Manson murders occurred in 1969.
Oh, that was what I was going to ask. Was he released and did more, or was this pre-release?
No, this is pre-Manson family murders.
So do you think if he wasn't tested on, he would have done the same thing when he was released from jail? I mean, he was in jail, so like he clearly had some type of record, but I don't even know what he did before. Now, this following story is actually based on material from the CBC podcast Brainwashed, a 6-part series co-produced with the Fifth Estate that investigates the CIA's covert mind control experiments from the Cold War and MKUltra to the so-called U.S. War on Terror. I took that quote from the article itself, but it was pretty interesting because we got the point of view from someone that was the son of a woman that was pregnant and being experimented on during MKUltra. And she was pregnant with this man that's writing the story while taking drugs. In this podcast, he states they gave her all the drugs, about 4 or 5 barbiturates and amphetamines at a time. She also received electroshock therapy, and in the article it stated that they didn't stop electroshock therapy until she was 8 months pregnant. So this was actually the Canadian psychiatrist she went to help him help her alleviate her symptoms of anxiety. And little did she know she was going to be a subject for a massive CIA program research study that ended up being just horrible. So there were actually medical notes revealed showing her stay at the hospital and how bad it really was. She spent 30 days in what was called a sleep room, a place where patients were put in a drug-induced coma and roused only for 3 feedings and bathroom breaks per day. In the medical notes, it shows that she lost 13 pounds that month, and her records show she couldn't stand up because she was too weak. So after his practice of psychic driving, which we talked about earlier, she actually forgot most things that she was used to be able to do. She forgot who her husband was, she forgot how to boil water, and she didn't know how to actually take care of her newborn child. She literally had to read on how to feed a child.
Yeah, that goes to show how much this screws you up, I think, both mentally and physically.
They would let her rest for 4 or 5 days, but then resume treatments again. And the psychiatrist's notes actually say that in 1960, 6 months after she entered, she had 29 electroshock treatments, with most of them of the extreme variety he was using. But because she was now in her 8th month of pregnancy, the treatment stopped. Like I said, but that's a direct quote. Now in her 8th month of pregnancy, the treatment stopped. Her son, quote, stated, "When she woke up from sleep, she didn't know who my father was. She didn't know it was her husband. I guess she didn't know anything. You know, she used to tell me she had to relearn everything." And it was interesting because this man, that's the POV of this podcast story.
This guy has no idea how he would be if he wasn't shocked. I mean, he could have been the next Albert Einstein. He'd be a doctor. He'd be a lawyer. I mean, hey, he could be less successful. Maybe MK Ultra made him smarter.
Yeah.
Maybe they made him a secret sleeper agent for...
Ooh, maybe he has psychic powers. He also said, "I think I was lucky. I think the only side effects that I know of, I guess, in school, I was a bit slow in the beginning."
It reminds me of another wacky CIA project, The Men Who Stared at Goats. I know that was a movie, but it was actually something where they tried proving telepathic powers and training people how to do that. So maybe that was a little precursor.
Yeah, this is very Stranger Things-esque. She didn't pass away, unlike some people who did die as a result of MK Ultra. For example, Frank Olson was a scientist who worked for the CIA, and at a 1953 CIA retreat, he drank a cocktail that was unknowingly spiked with LSD. And a few days later, he actually fell out of a window in an alleged suicide, but his family actually had a second autopsy because they didn't believe it. They were like, no, he did not pass away from a suicide. He was definitely murdered. And in 1994, the forensics team did find injuries on the body that had likely occurred before the actual fall, so they were able to do a second autopsy to prove this. And this caused theories that he may have actually been assassinated by the CIA, which is pretty crazy that that wasn't until 1994. Like, how many years late? Over 20 years later?
Yeah, that's so long after the fact.
Is that possible? But a few days before his death, actually, Frank Olson quit his position as acting chief of the Special Operations Division at Detrick, Maryland, later Fort Detrick, because of a severe moral crisis concerning the nature of his biological weapons research. So they were able to say, hey, he actually resigned, and then he was died, murdered, whatever. A few days later, what's the correlation here? This
is a little sketchy.
It is. Honestly, we could probably do a whole podcast on the specific story of it because it's just so insane. But essentially, they actually went to court over the death of Frank Olson, and the family was awarded with $750,000. The president and new director of the CIA apologized to the family for giving the drugs, not with consent, but they didn't apologize, obviously, for assassinating him because no one ever admitted to that, and they weren't able to prove that the CIA assassinated him. Now, in addition to Olson, reports show that Harold Blower, a professional tennis player in New York City, died as a result of a secret army experiment involving mescaline.
So it's pretty obvious that this affected so many people in so many different ways, and a lot of the studies even had long-term side effects. So how did they put an end to these, given all the negative consequences they had for people?
Well, they did bust MK Ultra eventually. Not until over 10 years, I believe.
I think it's important to note that they only busted it because a whistleblower came forward. It's not like they came forward.
I thought it was Seymour Hersh.
Was he the whistle?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's the whistleblower came forward to Seymour Hersh.
So in 1974, New York Times journalist Seymour Hersh published a story about how the CIA had conducted non-consensual drug experiments and illegally spying operations on U.S. citizens.
It's pretty crazy that the only way this was actually published was from a whistleblower that approached a reporter. It wasn't like the U.S. wasn't like, oh, we did this, we're sorry. It's like they were planning on sweeping this under the rug.
Yeah. Do you think the president knew about it?
See, that's the thing.
Because I feel like not everyone in higher up places knows about everything that goes below them, but like the person above, like they should have really just like gotten through the email. You know what? They didn't. You know why? Because they wanted to cover up. That's
well,
why
there
I
were
just
no
answered it
emails.
myself. Oh.
And even when there are emails like Hillary, when there were emails
Letters.
like Hillary Clinton, they just delete them.
What were there? Pigeon carriers? Okay. Oh, nice joke. Wow.
They do just delete the emails.
Now, that New York Times story actually prompted investigations by both the U.S. Congress in the form of the Church Committee and a presidential commission known as the Rockefeller Commission, instruction from President Ford. Now, obviously, the purpose of this was to investigate the illegal CIA activities, including Project MKUltra, but also other experiments on citizens. And the Church Committee actually delved into plots to assassinate foreign leaders as well, including Cuban dictator Fidel Castro and Congolese independence leader Patrice Lumumba. It also uncovered thousands of documents related to MKUltra. And after the committees dug deep and really investigated this, they recommended Ford issue the Executive Order on Intelligence Activities. Now, this prohibited experimentation with drugs on human subjects, except with the informed consent in writing and witnessed by disinterested party of each such human subject.
They have to have somebody that's not involved whatsoever.
Yeah. Oh, I guess people do volunteer to be on drugs that's how medical studies happen.
Yeah, I mean,
Duh.
It could be shampoo, it could be drugs.
But I think this was specifically drugs. Actually, Suave.
they were
My head is burning.
There goes our Suave sponsorship, as if we were getting one tomorrow. It's okay. I like the kids one. What's that one? The L'Oreal kids with the little eye.
So what were the consequences?
Well, the government didn't get away with it this time. Well, they kind of did. But the research and development program, and particularly the covert testing programs, resulted in massive abridgments of the rights of American citizens, sometimes with tragic consequences, concluded a Senate hearing in 1975 to 1976. And the deaths of 2 Americans can be attributed to these programs. We discussed them earlier. Other participants in the testing programs may still suffer from the residual effects. As I briefly mentioned earlier, the MKUltra documents were destroyed in 1973, and during the course of the program, employees of the CIA were actually destroying documents as they went along, so we don't have a lot of them. However, luckily for us, 8,000 pages of these records, which were mostly financial documents, were discovered in 1977. They actually were not destroyed in 1973, which launched a second kind of investigation into MKUltra, which is pretty crazy because any day now we could someone could have just have, actually no one could have scanned, there weren't scanners.
Yeah.
But someone could have had this information, or someone could still have the employees. They should investigate them all, but they don't want to because it's the CIA and it's the American government. This is a conspiracy theory.
It's the boogeyman.
Actually, it's interesting. This is not a conspiracy theory. This happened, but this could be mistaken for a conspiracy theory. If I heard about this and didn't know anything about it, people would say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. And be like, no, there's they admitted to it. Well, they admitted to not consensually giving them drugs and stuff. But yeah, anyway. But also imagine being one of the employees that shredded the documents that were like, yes, we got away with it. And then 20 years later, they were like, crap, 8,000 documents were discovered.
Yeah.
And my name's signed on the 50 of them signing off on buying booze at the safe houses in San Francisco when MKUltra was studying on those prostitute clients.
Yeah,
Prostitutes.
it's funny how the most sophisticated branches of the government still are members of the government, and they still can't execute anything correctly.
Now, although this 8,000-page finding resulted in 2 lawsuits, Blevin wrote the 1977 documents still leave an incomplete record of the program, and nobody ever answered for MKUltra. 2 lawsuits related to the program reached the Supreme Court in the 1980s, but both protected the government over citizens' rights. Now, the U.S. General Accounting Office issued a report on September 28, 1994, which stated that between 1940 and 1974, the Department of Defense and other national security agencies studied thousands of human subjects in tests and experiments involving hazardous substances. Now, after learning about this, I immediately started thinking how crazy this is. I mean, I would find it crazy if I read that it was a crazy scientist that did it, like a mass murderer or a serial killer. I'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe they fed these people LSD. But it's even crazier that it was literally the CIA.
Yeah, the government tends to do things unintentionally. They always make things worse.
Yeah.
by accident. It's funny because someone like Albert Einstein, do you know how why the atomic bomb was invented? It's because Albert Einstein had been speaking to Nazi scientists, and they had discovered that they were trying to make an atomic weapon. So he went to the US government and he wrote them a letter saying, you have to develop the atomic bomb. We started developing it, and it ended up creating the atomic bomb, and the Nazi scientists went from Germany to America to create it. So if Albert Einstein never had written that, they never would have created the atomic bomb.
Oh no, which is crazy because in this scenario, if America didn't buy enough LSD to feed half of the population, they tried buying it all out so that Soviets and other foreign governments couldn't buy it and use it on US soldiers and brainwash them. But if they didn't do that and bring LSD, maybe we wouldn't have had counterculture and Grateful Dead and all
and
that
jam
fun
bands
jazz.
and all the fun. Yeah,
Yeah,
the hippie
so really,
movement.
is MK Ultra that bad?
I think that a lot more malicious things could have happened. I mean, they did create Charles Manson and the Unabomber, but it could have been worse.
Yeah, they could have created 150 Charles Mansons.
Or, the Soviets could have bought it and then created something worse. Maybe they could have successfully done it, and then there could have been nuclear war. So
yeah, but still bad. Still not good that the
Oh,
CIA
it's
is
terrible.
capable of this, which leads me into my next topic of discussion or question of discussion is, do you think the CIA is doing this right now and we just don't know about it? And to lead off of that, is that what is happening to the missing 411 folks?
yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're being experimented on, the missing 401. That's a whole separate
I
conversation.
know, that's a whole separate, but I just thought of it because it's like national parks,
Yeah,
national nation,
national security.
CIA, the Eagle.
I mean, I think it's all in the sake of national security, and that's why they did it. Although people have to die for that. There's always casualties of war, unfortunately. I don't condone them doing this, but I can see why they tried doing it, and I'm sure they're doing something along these lines right now.
That's horrible if they are, because, well, I love
Obviously.
animals, but they're literally cruelty-free makeup that does not test on bunnies. However, if the CIA is actually studying people, giving them drugs and ruining their lives, stripping them away from their freedoms.
Well, that's why they have black sites and stuff.
What's that?
It's like a CIA safe house where they torture people secretly.
Oh no.
I think how they treated people was terrible, and what they did, although it was for national security, quote unquote, like literally accomplished nothing. It created messed up people. It fed people drugs.
Killed
and,
2 people.
I mean, it did
Probably
create...
created Charles Manson, which, well,
And the Unabomber,
allegedly.
it killed a lot of people
who killed,
indirectly.
Yes, maybe. Not sure.
And this is all we know about. I mean, who knows
But
who
it's
else?
bad either way. Even if they didn't kill anyone, it's just wrong. It's just wrong doing this without someone's consent.
Yeah, and the whole concept of them trying to create like a sleeper agent, somebody who can be activated to assassinate someone, is just a bunch of nonsense.
Oh, what do you mean? You don't think that was real?
No.
You don't think that that's why they did it?
No. Well, I think that's why they were trying to do it, but I don't think
Oh,
that's
yeah,
why
yeah.
Charles Manson did it.
Oh, no. I thought that you said the CIA wasn't studying this for that. I'm like,
no,
they
that's
studied it for
the whole.
multiple reasons.
Well, that's the whole point. They were trying to create a sleeper agent in some capacity
Yeah.
that could assassinate JFK. They could assassinate this person.
Or like truth serum.
Yeah.
So they could assassinate JFK because he was assassinated. Watch next episode for that. I wonder if anyone in the CIA is watching this.
Probably.
Oh no, probably. I'm fine. I'm just a young girl with the neon sign from Target. Where's my squishmallow? Squishmallow? Throw my squishmallow quickly. They're watching. Okay. That was a dumb joke. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast on MK Ultra. As always, please comment down below what video you want to see next. Comment any advice. Comment literally anything. Comment like what your favorite food is. I don't care. Just comment and I will reply to any and all comments that come my way. Also, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys next time. Love you guys. See ya. Bye. You can say bye too.
Bye.
Bye.
Toodaloo.
Toodaloo, motherfucker.